Good afternoon. One request, please silence your phones. Just a reminder. Hello and welcome to our 28th annual Yom HaShoah Holocaust Remembrance Program. Today, the communities of North Central Florida come together to remember the millions of victims of the Holocaust, both Jewish and non-Jewish. In addition to the 6 million Jews who were murdered, the Nazis also murdered over 5 million others, including Roma, communists, socialists, Jehovah's Witnesses, the disabled, members of the LGBTQ community, prisoners of war, and resistance fighters from the nations they conquered. We thank you all for being here today. Your presence reflects a deep commitment to honoring and memorializing the lives that were so brutally taken. It is our collective responsibility to continue telling their stories, sharing their lives, their poetry, their songs, and their artwork, so that future generations may remember and learn. A heartfelt thank you to our sponsors, the Jewish Council of North Central Florida, Congregation B'nai Israel and Rabbi David Kamen, Temple Shir Shalom and Rabbi Michael Joseph, the B'nai Israel Sisterhood, Ken Wald and Robin West, and the generous support of Vicky Santello and the Estelle Aiden Holocaust Education Fund. Estelle was a devoted member of the Yom HaShoah Committee for many years, and her legacy continues to support this important work and Holocaust education. And we have now expanded our work to teach Holocaust education in both public and private schools in our community. A special welcome and thank you to our speaker, Holly Mandelkern, poet, author, and Holocaust educator. Today, she will share poetry from her book, Beneath the White Stars, joined by students from our community. Her book is a collection of poems inspired by stories she has heard and lessons she has taught. We are so grateful to have her with us today. I am deeply honored to be here and be a part of this important program as a second generation. Both of my parents were Holocaust survivors from Poland. They were young, assimilated Jews in their teens and 20s. My father and his family were forced into the Lodz ghetto. Eventually, they were transported to Auschwitz and then the labor camps. He and his brother were the only two survivors of their large, extended family. During liquidation of her town's ghetto, which is now located in Ukraine, my mother escaped through an opening in the surrounding barbed wire fence. Everyone else left behind was taken. She sought refuge with a farmer several miles away. Though he would not shelter her, he did offer help. And miraculously, her sister was located nearby in the woods. The two were reunited and hid together in the woods for over a year. Out of nearly 300 extended family members, only the sisters survived. Their stories are just two among millions, testimonies of unimaginable strength and resilience. Because of them, it has become my mission to honor their memories, to share their stories, and to ensure the lessons of the Holocaust are never forgotten. This is why Holocaust education is especially crucial in today's world of anti-Semitism and hatred towards Israel. When I reflect on who I am, what truly defines me, it is this: I am the child of Holocaust survivors. We, the children of survivors, are a unique group. We always knew we were different. We knew our parents were different. We are the first eyewitnesses to their struggling, suffering, and perseverance. And now we will view the video of Estelle Aiden reading the poem "To My Child" by Abraham Sutzkever.
This poet wrote these poems as he lived these experiences. For my child. Was it from some hunger or from some greater joy? But your mother is witness to this. I wanted to swallow you, my child, when I felt your little body losing its heat in my fingers, as if I was holding a glass of warm tea on its passage to cold. You are no stranger. You are no guest. On this earth, we do not give birth to aliens. We reproduce ourselves like a ring in a ring in a ring. My child, what else can I call you but love? That is what you are. You, the seed of my every dream, the hidden third one who comes from the world's corner with the wonder of a sudden storm and brings two together to create and rejoice. Why have you darkened creation by closing your tiny eyes and leaving me begging outside in this snow-swept world which you have returned to? No cradle will give you pleasure whose rocking conceals the pulse of a star. Let the sun crumble like glass, since your small eyes will not see its light. That drop of poison extinguished your faith. You thought it was warm milk. I wanted to swallow you, my child, to feel the taste of my anticipated future. Perhaps you would blossom again in my blood. But no, I am not worthy to be your grave. So I bequeath you to the summoning snow. The snow, my respite. And you will sink like a splinter at dusk into its quiet depths and bear greetings from me to the frozen grasslands ahead.
Okay. Okay, we will now continue with the candle lighting portion of our commemoration. This afternoon, we light 7 candles. 6 candles memorialize the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust. As we light them, we honor each life and imagine the gifts they might have brought to our world had they lived, as well as their future generation. We also light a 7th candle to acknowledge a current conflict in which large numbers of innocent people are facing mass murder and related ravages. The world's worst humanitarian crisis, as noted by the UN, is taking place in the country of Sudan. There, a savage civil war is estimated to have killed over 150,000 people, often in ethnically targeted genocide, while over 12 million have been displaced, many in deliberate ethnic cleansing, and over 25 million face severe food shortages and potential starvation. We pray that never again extends to all our fellow human beings around the world. The 6 candles will be lit by Zev Weissman, survivor, Larry Sisla, son of survivors, in honor of his father, Moniek Sisa, who was a survivor, Rosalind Gross, daughter of survivors, Gabby Steinberg, granddaughter of survivors, Helen Frankel, me, daughter of survivors, and Holly Mandelkern, Holocaust educator and poet. The 7th candle will be lit by Abe Goldman, son of survivors, and former director of UF's Center for African Studies. Following the candle lighting, we will be led in El Malay Rachamim, the prayer for the peaceful repose of the souls of the departed, followed by the mourner's Kaddish. Let us now begin the candle lighting led by Robin West and Ken Wald with a text written by Mary Paulson.
Candle lighting by Mary Paulson. The first candle. We light this candle to remember the more than 1 million infants and children who face their murder with innocence, bewilderment, and terror. The second candle. We light this candle to remember the older youth and young adults who, on the cusp of maturity, realized that their lives would soon be over. The third candle. We light this candle to remember the mothers and grandmothers who, sensing the impending doom, struggled to comfort the children to the very end. The fourth candle. We light this candle to remember the fathers and grandfathers who, witnessing the decimation of their families, were powerless to protect them from certain death. The fifth candle. We light this candle to remember the millions who were spared immediate death, only to succumb to starvation, exhaustion, medical experiments, torture, and disease within the nightmare of the camps. The sixth candle. We light this candle to remember the survivors who every day of their lives, with haunting memories, hope for the future in the combined resolve, never again. The seventh candle. We light the seventh candle with a sense of awareness of reverence for life, l'chaim. Let the seven candles brighten a world that has been darkened by cataclysmic ignorance and hatred. Let the seven candles be a presence of awareness of other genocides that we mourn, along with our immeasurable loss in the destruction of European Jewry. Let the seventh candle remind us of our Jewish survival throughout the ages.
Rabbi Kamen will be leading us in, sorry, there was a change, in El Malay Rachamim.
Please rise. El Malay Rachamim Shochen Bamaromim Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashkina B'malot Kedoshim Utarim Kizohar Harakia Mazirim Let Lenishmot Kol Elam Shehizkarnu Hayom Livracha Shehalchu Lolamam Began Eden Tehim Menuchotam Ana Ba'al HaRachamim Hastirem B'Seter Kanfecha Le'olamim Utzror B'Yitzror HaChaim Et Nishmotehem Adonai Hu Nachalatam V'yanuchu v'shalom al mishkavotehem v'nomar. Amen. The Mourner's Kaddish, the Holocaust Kaddish, can be found in your booklets near the end, responsively. V'yitgadal Auschwitz, v'yitgadash Lodz, Shemei Rabbah Ponar. Bi'alma divra hirutei babiyar, vayamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'vyomechon, v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agalav v'izman kariv, v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach li'olam li'amei amaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach, V'yitboar v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh v'yitadar, v'yitale v'yitalal, shemei dekudesham, b'richu li'elam, min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran b'alma, v'imru amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabba min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imramav hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imrum. Amen. You may be seated.
Okay. Holly Mandelkern is a poet, lecturer, and educator who often writes to honor special individuals, and we're so happy to have her here today. In 2015, Holly completed the 12 Chairs Advanced Poetry course and won the 2016 Thomas Burnett Swan Award. Her poems appear in Revelry and journals of the National Council of Teachers of Holocaust Education, the Florida State Poets Association in Yeshiva University's PRISM, and Interdisciplinary Journal for Holocaust Educators. Her 2017 book, Beneath White Stars, combines history and poetry to tell the stories of people who fought for their lives and of those who rescued them during the Holocaust. In 2022, she released a multi-artist album of 17 songs based on these poems, and many have been played on the radio in Canada and the US, as well as Ireland. In addition, she will read her poem dedicated to the Bibas family. And now, Holly.
I'm happy to be with you here today. So this afternoon, we gather to remember the vibrant and valued, extraordinary and ordinary Jewish lives cut short in Europe in the darkest chapters of World War II. Passing these life stories down to the next generation is also our task. For young people, this history often seems distant. But for many of us, it's very close, having heard it firsthand from survivors or even from people in our own families. I first learned about the Holocaust indirectly through my father's experience as a prisoner of war in Germany. My father, Hermann Loedinger, was a lead bombardier in the U.S. Army's 8th Air Force, flying with the lead crew, whose members determined the flight path to the target and calculated the trajectory of nearby enemy aircraft for the 99 planes in their formation. So all 99 planes followed the lead of the lead crew. So they were either right 100 times or wrong 100 times. In March of 1944, members of the 8th Air Force were required to fly 30 missions, and that was up from 25, aiming primarily to take out industrial sites in Germany to halt the war. Not long after flying over Normandy on D-Day, my father's crew was shot down on their 27th mission over Germany on July 31st, 1944. This was his crew. That's my dad circled in the photo. 2 of these airmen died in the burning aircraft when it was shot, and the rest parachuted into enemy territory, where they were interrogated and imprisoned in various POW camps. My dad became a prisoner at Stalag-Luft III in Germany, which was a camp for British and American officers, where he and the other Jewish POWs were always worried about would they be singled out as Jews. Their Jewish identity was clearly stated on their dog tags, so there was no mystery about that. And they were in Germany, after all, and who knew if the Nazis would honor the Geneva Accords that were designed to protect prisoners of war? Would that include Jews? In late January 1945, when the tide finally was turning against Germany, all the POWs in Stalag Luft 3 were marched out into Germany's coldest winter in 50 years, without proper clothes and without rations. This march in freezing temperatures, without food or provisions, sounded similar to what Holocaust survivors described as their own death marches at the same time, although the POWs in his camp were in better health than Jews in the Nazi death camps. Even so, my dad lost 50 pounds from August of 44 until liberation in May of 45, which was 80 years ago now, when he weighed 120 pounds. Hearing Dad's stories, I wanted to know more. What came next for me was a trip for teachers to study with Holocaust survivors and scholars in Poland and in Israel, and then to teach some of what I had learned. It took quite a while to process the information, and I turned to poetry to honor the lives of Jews who had resisted and defied the Nazi regime in various ways, and also a small number of people who had risked their lives to rescue Jews. My poetry shares just a fragment of these lives because fragments really are all we can understand about their experiences. Also, poetry, both writing it and hearing it, and poetry turned into songs, can help us to remember the people we're honoring with our words, since poetry and song depend on mnemonic devices like rhyme and repetition. In 2017, as Helen said, I published a book of poems called Beneath White Stars, Holocaust Profiles in Poetry, and in 2022 produced an album of 17 songs based on the poems. But the trip is where this all began. And today we'll hear about some of these people through my poems or through songs based on the poems. Several students from local congregations will join with me in reading some of the poems. All the pen and ink drawings that you'll see were done with great sensitivity and care by the illustrator of my book, Byron Marshall, and some of those are in your program as well. So let's begin. Life changed dramatically for the 500,000 Jews living in Germany when Hitler came to power in 1933. Hundreds of laws were passed in the first years of his rule, restricting and constricting their lives. Just how dangerous life had become was crystal clear by November of 1938 with the violence of Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass from their homes, synagogues, stores, and orphanages. Within weeks, a plan went into effect that allowed Jewish parents to voluntarily send their children to live in Britain to get them out of harm's way. Quakers, Jews, and other religious groups had convinced the British government to accept Jewish children who were ages 5 to 17 from Germany, Austria, and occupied Czechoslovakia to travel first by train from their home countries and then across the English Channel by boat, but their parents would stay behind. This rescue mission, called the Kindertransport, lasted for 9 months, saved 10,000 children, but it stopped when war began. No one could guarantee the safety of their transportation during wartime conditions. Now, for a moment, imagine the complex feelings of parents watching their child board a train for the safety of Britain. Watching myself watch my son conveys this kaleidoscope of emotions. I watched myself watch my son board a train to Britain, cardboard draped around his neck, his identity number written. My hands cradled his bowed head. My mouth asked God to bless him, keep him close and grant him peace, so far away from Essen. I left him there as we were told, instructed not to cry. I heard myself say I'd soon come. My lips then said goodbye. I felt my legs walk me away. They took me to our home. The silence of his bedroom meant the meaning of alone. The weeks endured, his letter came. He's well, but hoped I'd follow. Our kinder turned into letters. My heart felt full, yet hollow. I watched my eyes reread his words, lips blessed a distant stranger. Though out of sight, I felt a light that kept him far from danger. In January 1939, 12-year-old Fritz Westfeld from Essen, Germany, left his hometown for Berlin to England on the Kindertransport, where he'd lived with 2 different families over a period of 18 months. At that time, his parents were able to join him in England, although his father was briefly arrested in England, which was not unusual for Jewish men from Germany coming to England. They were suspected of being spies for the Germans, which of course is totally irrational. There, in England, the family made plans to go to America to join Fritz's older brother and an uncle who was an artist who were living in Nashville, Tennessee. And Fritz, now in America, called himself the less German-sounding name Fred Westfield. He attended public school, and he worked to help support his family. When he graduated from high school, he worked in the jewelry business, and in 1945 joined the U.S. Army and worked as an instructor using skills he learned in the jewelry trade. After the war, he attended Vanderbilt, where he graduated in 3 years at the top of his class. And when he had left for England at the age of 12, he didn't know any English. Dr. Westfield became a noted economist and taught at Vanderbilt for more than 30 years. I read his story in my alumni magazine, and I was in touch with him writing my book. I had called the Kindertransport an early attempt to escape from the Nazis, but he corrected me. He said there was nothing early about it. They had lived through 5 hard years of harsh rule before he could leave for England. So hearing his view as a child on the Kindertransport inspired this poem that will be read by Jack Howler called I Am That Child. Jack, I think you're going to use this microphone. Okay. And the poems that the students are reading are also included in your program.
I am that child, my suitcase stuffed with clothes, transported from Berlin, my old hometown. I am the Jew the Nazis said he loathes. I rode the rail to live under the crown. I am that child transplanted to a home with Quakers kind who often spoke of thee. London life meant safety and shalom. Each night I doubted I'd see family. I am that child, now called their boy, their lad, by grown-ups Uncle Jim and Auntie Nell. In me they looked for good instead of bad. They taught me right from wrong and fed me well. I'm a man because my parents felt I could survive where loving kindness dwelt.
Thank you, Jack. So the Kindertransport stopped when war began in September of '39. Some Jews remained in Germany because they couldn't find a country willing to let them in. But life was becoming more and more dangerous. In the early 1940s, some German Jews would be forced to board trains headed to ghettos that had been created in sections of the large Polish cities, Poland having already surrendered to Germany. Based on accounts I'd read, I imagined what it would be like for a teenage girl from Frankfurt, Germany, a very cultured and a very Jewish city, to pack a suitcase in a hurry for such a trip, not knowing, though, where she was going or what she'd need. Her story is captured in the poem read by Gabby Steinberg, Packing Her Bag.
Forced to leave her Frankfurt home, she's summoned to the train. With only hours to pack a bag, no one to explain how long the trip, the weather there, belongings she would need. Mother packs some candlesticks, fresh baked bread to feed. Yes, she said to ballet shoes, doubted pas de deux, but left behind her warmest boots without the proper clues. Tossed her frayed and favorite dress, no room in her small bags. Relocating to the east, she'd soon be wearing rags. She held her piano music sheets, nocturnes, Beethoven, Brahms, pictured slimmest book of prayers, not leaving without the Psalms. Raina Maria Rilke's poems goeth for the rail, not knowing all she'd really need were water and a pail. Wrapped in woolen winter skirt to cover her bare knees, she wore a coat, a warm-up suit for dying by degrees. She buried asthma medicine, the scant supplies prescribed. She'd learned to breathe a lethal air with treatment improvised. In truth, she'd need a dose of luck, skills to measure food, a sleuth to get her slice of bread, a star that named her Jude. She pressed her life into a satchel filled with precious stuff. But to survive in ghetto Lodz, things were not enough.
Thank you, Gabby. The Lodz ghetto was this girl's destination. The second largest city in Poland, Lodz was also the home of Roman Kent, whose father ran a successful textile factory. Roman and his family were forced into the newly created Lodz ghetto in March of 1940, and there Roman and a younger brother worked in a factory making leather goods for the German military. The brothers also grew vegetables for the family, a skill their father had taught them, taking advantage of something unique to this ghetto, that is, the opportunity to grow crops and to being permitted to eat them. It seemed that with the food that they could grow and the jobs that they had helping the German military, they could survive if the war didn't last much longer. But Roman and his brother Leon were rounded up too in 1944 and spent the rest of the war at concentration and death camps. In 1946, the boys, now orphans, were sent to Atlanta. This is Roman on the left and his brother Leon on the right. Atlanta, a city that Roman knew only from reading Gone with the Wind. First placed in a home where the adults were not very interested in hearing the boys' stories, Roman requested that they be moved to another home, and that request was granted. Despite having missed 6 years of formal schooling, Roman was a top student, graduating with others his age from a public high school, and both of these brothers would also graduate from Emory University. I met Roman Kent at a conference for survivors and Holocaust educators, and I was very impressed with his warm manner towards the teachers and his firm determination to preserve the history and for teachers to help to do this. Roman Kent, who passed away in 2021, headed the Jewish Foundation for the Righteous, an organization which gives financial help to people in need who had rescued Jews. He played a major role in many other Holocaust organizations too. My poem, Uprooted, tells his story. Kilometers from Lodz, we summer at our villa, chasing soccer and volleyballs, tasting fruits from Father's garden. September war halts our play. We leave behind ripe kernels, swells of radish and roots, the flavor of strawberry sweet days. In Ghetto Lodz, brother and I turn stones to till our plot. Some seed their patch to father for cash. Our ground grows by squares. Cabbage, lettuce, cucumbers give life. Potatoes sprout from buried eyes. Beets, carrots, and radishes See dreams beyond the leather factory where we sew knapsacks for the enemy. We stand guard over our crops. Roundups send the last of Lodge to trains. Before they leave, the leaving pick our every ear and leaf and stem, the nightshades that foreshadow hunger. I sob over wasted work, though buried potatoes still feed until we too are found. After Auschwitz and Flossenburg, Brother and I sail for New York, orphans. Bureaus send us south to a dot of map that I know from Gone with the Wind. Planted rows strewn with leathered harnesses and hoof prints. Hunger. Their restored homes and gardens sit grand and green. We stand alone in a house of strangers, our story driven underground like potatoes in Lodge. Well, hunger was a problem in all the ghettos, and children risked their lives to smuggle food to feed their families, crawling through barbed wire or squeezing through holes in ghetto walls under the eyes of the German authorities. This poem was inspired by Mendel Grossman's photograph of a young boy serving soup to his little sister in a ghetto in Poland. Mendel Grossman was the official photographer of the Lodge Ghetto Council, who hid his camera under his coat and illegally took, in addition to what he was supposed to take, he took 10,000 photos, such as this one, showing us what life and its variations were like in the ghetto. Dylan Price will now read the poem, Bowl of Soup.
This bowl of soup is dear to her, death the going price. Potato peels, bones and broth, simmered without spice. Peels through guarded ghetto walls, bones from stolen meat, heated up and watered down, barely fit to eat. Brother does the foraging to feed the four of them. He's only 9, yet hopes to find an extra root or stem. With the spoon from silver chest, a trace of family past, he ladles stock into her bowl to break the daily fast. On freezing Warsaw ghetto days, his broth sustains her soul. My brother loses childhood here. It seeps through cracks in bowl.
Thank you, Dylan. Vladka Mead, the survivor who led our teacher's trip, grew up in Warsaw and then in Warsaw's ghetto. A teenager, she joined the Jewish resistance movement there and posed as a non-Jew, which was a crime that, if discovered, was punishable by death. So she had to act very confident and convincing in her new identity, teaching herself to laugh out loud in a very hearty way, which was something that only free people, not Jews, would be doing in these times. She traded her real name, Fagala, that meant little bird, for a new wartime name, Vladka, a name she kept for the rest of her life. She took on some very dangerous tasks in the Warsaw Ghetto. She helped get Jewish children over the wall and into the homes of non-Jews who would take the risk of harboring them, bringing into the ghetto vital information for the resistance movement. For example, she brought the first map of the camp of Treblinka in her shoes into the ghetto. She was actually taken into custody, and she got a very lucky break where the meeting was dissolved and she could leave. She showed the map to the Jewish resistance movement, and only then did they realize that the Jews who were told they were going to the work in the East were not, that they were being sent to die. And another thing that she did was that she smuggled in dynamite, bullets, and pistols for an uprising that would be led by young men and women in April of '43, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, which was the first armed uprising against the Nazis in all of occupied Europe. And you know, our commemoration for Yom HaShoah is linked to this Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Vladka and her husband, Benjamin Mead, whom she met in the resistance movement, came to America after the war. And in 1948, her book about the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising on both sides of the wall was published. She and her husband worked with President Jimmy Carter in 1979 to establish and build the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, dedicating their lives to helping fellow survivors, to keeping Jewish culture alive, and to educating hundreds of teachers. And wherever we teachers traveled, Vladka was hailed as a hero. And yes, that is Elie Wiesel behind President Carter in the picture, and the gentleman next to Vladka is her husband, Benjamin Mead. Here's my tribute to her. Timing is everything. Fagala, the little bird, learned early that timing was everything in the Warsaw Ghetto. When to teach Jewish children to sing and write, when to smuggle them over the wall, when to forge her fate as Vladka, when to dress dynamite in greasy paper, call it butter or paint, as Vodka and Zlotys prime the Polish Guard, when to carry the map of Treblinka in her shoes, when to comfort, tarry, or flee. Vladka Mead learned later that her stories, though etched in print and stone, were best nesting in the hearts of teachers turned storytellers. Nightmares turned to dreams, screams to songs, youth to fighters, despair to action. Now, flying higher than this earthly wall, she rests in peace, secure that others have glimpsed the night. That would be you students here, getting your introduction to this dark period of history. Vladka wrote her book shortly after the war, but some people wrote during the Holocaust so that their words would serve as eyewitnesses to history, and some wrote as a way to preserve their souls and preserve memories of happier times. We heard a poem this morning that was by Abraham Sutzkever. This is Abraham Sutzkever. He is one of my favorite writers. He was a poet and partisan. He distinguished himself at a very early age as an insightful poet of nature and human nature, less so as a political and philosophical poet. His father died young, as did his sister, and he missed so much school that he was practically self-educated. He married Freitke, a woman who, like himself, was devoted to the Yiddish language. In the fall of 1941, Sutzkever, his wife, and his mother were forced into the ghetto in Vilna, Lithuania, and there his mother and his newborn child were killed. His response was to document everything happening to them in poetry. He felt that writing in his native language of Yiddish would keep him alive. He taught poetry to teens in the ghetto, and one of his poems, Beneath Your White Stars, Unter Deine Weiße Stern, was set to music and sung in the ghetto. It was actually sung in many of the ghettos. After an unsuccessful uprising by Jews in the Vilna ghetto in the summer of '43, inspired by the one in Warsaw just a few months before, Sutzkever fled with his wife and other partisans into the forest to try to survive and to fight. Most of these people, I would say probably 99%, had never held a gun. Here is Sutzkever holding a gun. They walked through swamps infested with minefields, and Sutzkever described how he was so invested in poetry that he would hear the beat of a poem as he was walking amidst the minefields, and he felt that keeping his focus on the beat of the poem would keep him out of danger. And I mean, he lived, so I guess he was right. I guess it did. He also stepped very, very carefully when he and his wife climbed aboard a small plane that was sent by the Lithuanian president in exile, who was himself a poet, who knew Sutzkever's work because he had translated it. So that was a really great poetic connection for Sutzkever. Sutzkever's documentation of life and death in the ghetto was invaluable, and after the war, he testified at the Nuremberg trials in 1946 of the horrors they had experienced in Vilna and in the forest. Sutzkever and his wife Freki moved to Israel, where he wrote poetry in his beloved native tongue, Yiddish, for the rest of his long life, not wanting that expressive language to die. You know, there was a lot of discussion when Israel was just being established as a state that they wanted to focus on Hebrew as the language that would be spoken and receive most attention. But his need for keeping a journal in Yiddish succeeded because of his efforts. And for 50 years, he edited Israel's only major literary journal in Yiddish, The Golden Chain. And one of his contributors was his close friend, Mark Chagall, who here illustrated one of Sutzkever's poems. Now, Sutzkever's poem, Beneath Your White Stars, Unter deine weiße Stirn, inspired the title of my book, my album, and also the words of this very personal song that we're going to play today. And these are some of the people who were involved with this song, and it will be performed by vocalist Michelle Amato. And it's called Sutzkever Stars.
In the silence of the night, I rise to stanzas of his light. The spine of stars, Orion's belt, a glowing ring of what he felt. Stars knew Egypt's famined grain, like words restored in sheaves again. His fallen star, a newborn child, would live through him when verse was done. Avram waited for a hand beneath the pearly stars to stretch through snowy nights, a shelter from afar. Whitened stars fell into tears. Meter marked his earthly fears. He wished for embryonic times when stars were watered by his rhyme. From afar he sang of dust, the steady stars a heart could trust. The candles counted heaven's space, cantillations at his base. to stretch through silent snowy nights, a shelter from afar, from waited for God's hand to cradle his dark fears, past Vilna's frozen rooftops, searching through the years. From afar he sang of dust, the steady stars a heart could trust. The candles counted heaven's space, cantillations at his base. The candles counted heaven's space, cantillations at his base.
Abraham Sitzkaver, a wonderful, wonderful poet. Pavel Friedman was a young man from Prague who was sent to the Theresienstadt ghetto, also known as Terezin, where many Jewish writers, musicians, and artists were imprisoned. Here, Pavel wrote a poem called The Butterfly that's often studied in our schools, and in this poem, he also notes the beauty of a chestnut tree. In another place, in an attic in Amsterdam, the diarist Anne Frank also wrote about observing a chestnut tree outside her window. The next poem pays tribute to Pavel and Anne's search for nature's solace in a tree from their respective places of confinement. And Willow Titus will read the poem, Parallel Limbs.
Pavel Freeman and Anne Frank drew comfort from a tree, a private avenue, aligned, alone, majestic and free. Anne's horse chestnut dressed the yard in shades of leafy green. Painted birds in the bluest skies trace what life has been. Enfolding arms of open air, envisioned still her fear, solace for the suffering dewdrops of the tears. No ghetto hosted butterflies, but Pavel praised the bright yellow-fingered dandelions, climbing branches, white chestnut shoulders, boyhood spells aloft where centuries played, grateful for familiar things, fortress of shade. Amsterdam tries and stay to love the sturdy limbs and simple words they lend them and pen their private hymns.
Thank you, Willow. So in this same poem written by Pavel Friedman, Pavel observed that butterflies don't live at the ghetto at Terezin. They fly away, but he cannot. So this poem is pretty much all we know about his creative life. Pavel's poem inspired my poem called You Never Saw Another Butterfly that will be read by Michael Rashkind.
Here we go. You tell us of the butterfly, whose yellow dazzled you. You kissed the ghetto world goodbye, the last bright-winged one flew. The sun's tears, like your own fears, sing against a white stone. The sun can cry, but you must dry your tears inside a poem. For 7 weeks you gaze about for signs of what's still living. Dandelions, white chestnut branch, your reasons for Thanksgiving. You miss the flight of butterflies, oh happy living things. We mourn your own departure there, a poet without wings.
Thank you, Michael. For many who survived the Holocaust, luck was on their side, as well as someone to help them. Sometimes total strangers stepped up to help. Father Bruno, seen in this photo, formerly known as Henry Rendiers, was a Benedictine priest in Belgium. He started rescuing Jewish children in 1942, finding shelter for several hundred children in convents, monasteries, and homes throughout the country. And he didn't just drop them off. After he delivered the children to their new homes, he stayed in touch with them, and he made sure that they were receiving enough food, proper education, and emotional support in the settings where they were now living. He rode his bicycle throughout the country, checking on them at great risk to himself, but he kept rescuing the children. These boys and girls had to hide their previous lives and religion. They learned the Catholic liturgy, in Latin, often the test of one's Catholic identity, received new names, and tried to blend in. 9-year-old Jack Goldstein, for example, learned the Catholic prayers, but wondered if he'd ever see his parents again. Here he is on the right, and he did see his parents again. Rachel Silberman, a 3-year-old, was placed at a convent, and she would also be reunited with her mother. Father Bruno placed Flora Mandelowitz and her 2 sisters at a convent, and he visited all of them to make sure they were thriving, and he was especially attentive to make sure that Flora, the oldest, was continuing with her education. So I heard this story directly from Flora when I met her at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, where she was my guide. She hurried up and took me right to the rescuers' hall, where she wanted me to learn the story of Father Bruno, of what he had done for her and for many others, and she kissed his name on the wall. So Flora stayed in touch with Father Bruno throughout his lifetime, and I'm sure that he was pleased that she became a teacher at a school in Silver Spring, Maryland, the school that's now called the Flora M. Singer Elementary School in her memory. And now we'll close with Father Bruno's story, performed by Brendan Nolan, who is a musician who was the first one I worked with on the album, and he has done 6 of the 17 songs for the album. So now we're going to close with his story in the song, Kissing the Wall.
Jack Goldstein boarded the train to Mazic, Belgium, northward bound. Under the cloak of Father Bruno, the hide and seek that he allowed. Though hiding Jews, it was no game now. False IDs, food ration cards, new last names, new religion, with white-robed Jewish boys on guard. Father placed Rachel Silberman in Bruges by the North Sea, at the convent of Franciscan sisters. A blue coat she called Mon Ami, in the steely rows of kneeling stools, the coated covered cold bare knees, yet they spoke with light in their eyes of before the war, Le Paradis. My parents are coming, my parents are coming, because of kind Father reindeers. My parents are coming, my parents are here, because of kind Father Reindeer. Flora Mandelkern of Brussels, sent by her mother, tended by him. He rode his bike all through the country, hiding Jewish kids and spinning hymns. Dumb dressed apart of several people, his shorn head hidden a beret he wore. The ration cards fed hundreds of children, recycled as orphans through convent doors. He had to move Flora again to Our Lady of the Seven Sorrows, where she thrived. Thank you to the sisters and to Father Bruno, the Benedictine who saved the hive. Our guide at the museum, now it's Flora. She points to his name in the rescuer's hall. She says, he was a saint if there ever was one, as she bent and kissed the wall. My parents are coming, my parents are coming, because of kind Father Reindeers. My parents are coming, my parents are here, because of kind Father Reindeer. Abbe Bruno Reindeers.
I want to thank you for your attention today, and I'd especially like to thank Jenna Backer and Philip Schwartz on the Planning Committee, our student readers who did a wonderful job today, my husband Paul, and our son Joel, who listened to every innuendo and version of this talk, the illustrator of Beneath White Stars, Byron Marshall, and the musicians whose songs we heard today, Brenda Nolan and Michelle Amato, and all the other musicians whose names were on the screen too. I'd also like to thank my Sunday Poetry Critique group. Sorry I missed today, but you see I wasn't goofing off. The Hebrew word Zakor, seen in the middle picture, means remember. I hope you'll remember the people who fought to survive, as well as those who tried to rescue them. The people you heard about today are among my stars, and more of them are included in my book and my music. Today, we also remember the strength and the courage shown over the past 18 months by our brothers and sisters in Israel. I'd like to recall one family captured from kibbutz Nir Oz, the Bibas family, the mother with the darling red-headed boys, hostages set to be released in February. Instead, we found out that Shiri and her boys, Ariel and Kafir, had already been murdered. Not wanting to forget them, I wrote my feelings into a poem. Not Letting Darkness Define Us, February 20th, 2025, in memory of Shiri, Ariel, and Kafir Bibas. Today, our hands unroll the Torah scroll to Exodus, its civil laws, the torts on murder, theft, and how to treat the stranger, right here and now, where godliness must grow. Enlightened teachings darken as we learn that mother and red-headed tots whose smiles we know, abducted from kibbutz Nir Oz, meadow of strength, will come home as remains. We see the coffins drawing whistled jeers, a black parade for Gazans, young and old, while some who watch the news on TV gasp at evil on display, the killers bold. The Jews raise fists, her body falsely marked, and mangled babies strangled with bare hands. Israeli honor guard guides caskets home as thousands lined the flag-draped streets in tears. TV in Israel airs old clips, the mom out chasing boys around the verdant groves, these tots who first take flight in Batman clothes, their image romping, meadow strong, engraved. The husband-father, hostage but released, breaks hearts expressing words of love for them. We gather for the slain, hold hands and cry, not letting darkness define us. Thank you.
Let us stand for Hatikva. The words are inside your program. Last page. Kol od balevav pnima nefesh Yehudi hamiya ulfate mizrach kadima ayin letzion Sophia Od lo avda tikvatenu hatikva bat shnot alpayim lihyot am chofshi be'artzenu eretz Tzion Yerushalayim להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים. You may be seated.
So we're coming to the conclusion of our program. It was very moving. Thank you so much, Holly. Amazing. The poems are just incredible and the stories. We thank again everyone who participated in planning this program, the Yom HaShoah committee, the entire congregation. We also want to give special thanks to Philip Schwartz, who today and for many years has done such a magnificent job with all of the technical and audio-visual features of this commemoration. Many of us could not handle that. Personally, I want to thank Jenna for arranging this with Holly and for your dedication to Holocaust education in our community. And more thanks can go on, but I really treasure your friendship. Thank you so much. And there's refreshments in the back. Holly's going to stay and mingle, and I think you have your books and CDs, so you can take a look at those. Thank you for being here for this great program. Am Yisrael Chai.